what you wanted to be. When you were starting, maybe you wanted to become a doctor, a lawyer, those professions that when we were younger, not that we are old, but when we were younger, we used to be told, you'd be a doctor, you'd be a lawyer. Technology at that time was a bit sketchy, or rather, people would say, you need to connect wires. But right now, it's more than just connecting wires. Right now, technology has evolved into taking over the whole world. So right now, even with artificial intelligence, you can see there's even fear that technology will take over the jobs that are currently there, as opposed to before when you used to be told, take this career, become a lawyer, become a doctor. Right now, people are actually fearing the technology that they used to think would be just connecting wires. So when I started out, I wanted to become a pilot. Then later on, I decided no, that after the Marsabit crash, I decided no, that is not really what I want to do. Then later on, I changed from that and said I wanted to become a doctor, more so a neurosurgeon. This was inspired by the numerous books I read by Ben Carson. I think he really influenced me on that. So up to Form 3, I was very adamant and I knew that I'm going to become a neurosurgeon. But getting to Form 3, all along I still loved technology. I remember I had a machine, but at that time, basically in primary school, what you could do mostly is just play on your computer and do just some funny graphics, nothing really much. So when I was in Form 3, nikasikia those biology terms, no, they were too much for me. Then I was like, am I going for the money in terms of the neurosurgery, or am I going for my passion? So thinking back, I remember this is something I've always loved computers. I've always loved computers and interacting with them, but I'd not really focused deeply. In as much I was already doing a subject in computer studies, that was not my key goal. My key goal at that time was neurosurgery. But after Form 3, I asked myself, that time when you say I want to have a meeting with me, myself, and I, so I sat myself down and asked myself, am I just following the money or am I following my passion? So at that point, I just then decided, no, I'm just going to follow my passion because I'm not seeing myself staying for 7 years thinking about neurosurgery and the biological terms. So that's how I decided, no, this is going to be my full-time profession. Then afterwards, for me, once I set my mind to something, that's what I'm going to follow through, regardless of whatever might come my way. I'll still follow through whatever I've set my mind to. So immediately after clearing Form 4, I decided to now start attending. By that time, I think the only platform I knew of was Akira Chicks. So I decided I'm going to go to Akira Chicks and attend one of their sessions. Luckily, that day they were doing some web development. So for those who don't know what Akira Chicks is more of a learning environment for girls. I don't know whether right now they've changed, but at that time it was more of girls, where you learn about web development, different technologies. So on that specific day, they were training us on learning HTML and some bit of CSS. So that's how now my passion was fueled. Then all along, while in campus, you're still struggling. You don't have really a mentor per se to guide you on what you're supposed to go through. Whether you start with Vue.js, whether you start with Angular, whether you start with Mongo, whether you start with front-end React, you're just floating. So what do? You just decide, let me try my hand on. I've learned HTML, I've learned CSS, so let me try my hand on maybe Angular. You give yourself some tutorials, especially web. I think it's W3 School, which is the most famous one whenever you search anything coding. So you say, let me try that. Then after some time, unasikia pana hii haingii. Then you go and try Vue.js. After some time, unasikia haingii. So that was my whole journey actually in campus for the 4 years. In as much as I was learning the actual course in technology, I was still not very sure. So I would do I would do Vue.js, I would do Angular, I would do Node. I remember I did quite a lot, but still telling myself, hii haingii, this one haingii. So what happened after, now on getting to 4th year, you have to do your final year projects. What do? You have two options, especially with the Kenyan system. It's either ufanyiwe or you just grab your attention and sit down and do your projects. So I said, I'm not going to take the road for someone doing it on my behalf. Reason being, this is a profession that I want to join. So I'm going to really stick to one language. So I said, this PHP that people have been talking about, and all along I'd never thought of just sitting down and studying PHP. So I said, this PHP that people have been talking about, it's what I'm going to use. I knew the project I'm going to work on, but I didn't know the specific language. So I said, this PHP is what I'm going to use. In as much as at that time people, or even still right now, people say PHP is dead. Well, it's not dead per se, but that's what I decided I'm going to do. So I went to Udemy, got a course, and decided that's what I'm going to follow. And the good thing with Udemy, if you search very well, there's some tutors who give you projects along with the course material. So I found one, and that's what I settled on. As I did my project, I was also learning. Teresa, am I using PHP with WordPress? No, for that specific project, I didn't use it with WordPress. But also, maybe I can note, before I had put my hand into WordPress because I just started my content creation journey. So at that time, I just started blogging and I was using WordPress. But at that time, WordPress is a drag and drop. So I couldn't say I was really understanding the behind the scenes. But now when I started to do my 4th-year project is when I decided I'm not going to do the actual hardcore PHP without the WordPress. But before that, when I was blogging, I used to use WordPress by the drag and drop feature. So at that point now, when I decided to take the project, I was doing the project while now doing that tutorial at the same time. So if you're on module 1 and he's developing the front page, that is what I was also developing for my own projects. So if they say we are doing the login page, that is what I'm also doing for my project, because I already know these are the features I want for my project, but I didn't know especially how to code it. So I would just tweak the tutorial to fit my project. So if they're developing maybe a payment system, that's what I would do. I would go and read about the specific payments. Yeah, PHP, they say it's dead, but I think it's still in use, especially with the frameworks that it has. So it's not really dead per se. Yeah, so that's what I would do. So I would stick with PHP, do each module as I do my project, and also write my notes. So login page, I'm doing the tutorial saying doing the login page, I'm doing the login page. If it's doing sessions, that's what I'm doing as well on my project. Then now after that, the good thing is with project, you should be able to understand all the behind the scenes. So that's what now I was able to do. Then now after finishing, the next step is just getting a job. Then maybe I should surprise you with this. The first job I ever got, and I would be thankful to the first employer because he was the owner of the organization. So he asked me one thing: do you have a project to show? Mind you, the only project I had done was now the one for my 4th-year project. So yes, do you have a project to do? And luckily, they say opportunity means preparedness. I had carried my laptop with me, and the project was there. The only difference is, yes, I'd hosted it, but now I was also having some bit of challenges accessing the hosting end of it. So I asked, can I showcase it from my machine? And he was like, yes. Then at the end of it all, he said, do you know if you didn't showcase this project, you didn't have gotten this opportunity? So I'll start with my key learning points from there. For anyone who wants to delve into software development, the first thing you should always do is have a project at hand. Whichever project you're going to do, that will be your breaking zone. Because from that project, you'll learn a lot of lessons through it. You'll be able to learn different parts of that project. You'll be able to learn if it's that login screen. And then the one thing with coding, if you're starting out, maybe I can share this tip. The major thing when coding is you have to understand the code. That is, you should be able to create and insert data into the database. You should be able to call it and read it. You should be able to update that data, and you should be able to delete that data. Once you're able to get to know those 4 key things, then you can say you have the confidence, regardless of whether you know a language or not. You can say you already have that confidence into delving into that field. But while you're at it, you should ask yourself, why am I delving into it? Especially right now when we have a lot of notion with the tech bros, the tech babes and all that, because right now it's the in thing. Are you a tech bro? Are you a tech babe? Before you get into that and be carried away by the wave, ask yourself, why am I delving into it? I like to relate back to my neurosurgery journey. I wanted to join it because of the money, because I'd read the Ben Carson was encouraging us all about the hard work and how he managed to enter and how he was now he was very wealthy through neurosurgery. So the same, are you interested in joining because of the money, or do you have the passion? Because at times it can get hard. For those already in it, there are times you have sleepless nights trying to debug that specific code. So you should ask yourself that why. Then, next, after asking yourself that the why that you want to join this specific field, I'd encourage you to start with one particular language. For me, I started with PHP, in as much as people are still saying it's dead, but I asked myself if this was among the first OOP languages to be used, then there has to be something that from it triggered now all these other languages that came up. So I decided to go with what was initially the major thing in the current scene. Then take up the courage and do a full project. You can learn the basics of what is programming, maybe what is an object, what is a class. But if you stop at that point, then you haven't really understood what you're doing, because you have that class, you know what a class is, you know what abstraction is, you know what polymorphism is. But can you actually put that into a code and convert it into something visible that people can interact with as a software? So that's something that you should do doing a project, and I would highly recommend Udemy, because it has instructors who are able to even break down the tutorial into specific projects. And with that, you can say by the time you're finishing that project, you're actually done with a full project and you have something on your portfolio. And you have something on your portfolio on your GitHub to show that, yes, I've done a full project by my own. Then whenever you are stuck, this is something I normally say, there's no need of struggling when you can get help. There are so many people out there who are willing to help, as long as you're also putting in the efforts. You cannot fail to put in the effort and just expect everything to be handed down to you. You have to put in the effort, then ask whenever you are stuck. I think I would say I'm very grateful to people I've met along my journey, especially considering the scene is mostly filled with men. I would say I'm really grateful because they were able to help me along the journey. Whenever I had a question, I think I have met very good colleagues. They were not afraid to assist whenever I needed help in any of that. So don't be afraid to ask. If you're stuck, just reach out to someone. I'm sure along the space here tech, there are so many mentors that can also hold your hand as you pursue. If you feel you're not understanding a specific concept, if you're feeling like this something like classes are not they're not being understood, reach out and ask. I'll give you an example with myself. For me, I had said immediately we learned a unit on Java. I had said that is the end of my relationship with Java, in as much as it's a very key language currently. But when I was learning that unit in campus, I'd say that is the end of me with Java. But the good thing is never have a closed mind. Always be willing to learn. So when I said that, apparently right now what I'm using is the same Java and Spring Boot that I had said that is the end of me and Java. So whenever you're stuck, just reach out and ask for help, and also be willing to change and adapt, because new languages are coming out every time, every year there are new languages that are coming up. So always be ready to adapt. In as much as I started with PHP and then went to Laravel, then now I'm doing Spring Boot and Java, I was willing to adapt to the same Java that I'd said I would never touch immediately after we were done with that unit and we were done with that exam. So then also, if you're starting out, also look for an opportunity. Even if it's not paying much, just look for that opportunity where you can have the real world exam experience. Because you can have your portfolio, but now when you're looking for that job, you're looking for that assignment, people want to see the real world experience that you have. What did you put out there into the world? These are projects that you have on your GitHub. They are yours, but have they been used outside there by the world? So get that real world experience, no matter how small it is. Just take it up and start from there. Build that confidence, because technology just requires confidence. Because the truth is, you can never learn everything in technology, but with confidence, you can present yourself and you can grow with that confidence. So once you have that one project that you've understood, you've worked you've done something with a real world experience, then gain the confidence and go out there and present yourself. Then now the question would be, so I know these key points, I know what I should do. So where should I start from after saying I'm starting with this language? I've picked up, maybe I'm starting with Laravel, I'm starting with React. So what next after that? Personally, I would say before you start with the front end side, understand first the basics, that is HTML, CSS, and Bootstrap. Then afterwards, I wouldn't advise you delve into the front end frameworks first. I would advise you go to the back end languages. Reason being, once you're able to understand the back end, how whichever software you're working communicates, what are the processes that are happening in that back end, then you're able to also relay that on the front end. So while you're building that project, I would say understand the basics, CSS, Bootstrap, and HTML. Pick one backend language, do a project on it, a full project on it, and now for that project, use now the basics of HTML, CSS, and Bootstrap as your front end. Then after you've understood that, learn about APIs and consuming APIs. So APIs is like a hotel. A hotel, you have you as the customer, you have the waiters, and you have the chefs in the kitchen. So the waiter will become the API for you. The waiter will pick your requests and send that request and communicate it to the chef, who will cook your meal, then bring it back to you through the waiter. So the waiter will, once the meal is ready, the chef calls the waiter picks your food and brings it now to you as a customer. So the API in this sense is now the waiter. Learn about the APIs and do both ends. Create an API and learn how to consume APIs as well. Then next, after you've understood that whole journey, get to now pick now a front-end language that now you can integrate it with now the project that you had used your Bootstrap and CSS and HTML. In this case, you can decide to duplicate that project. One, to just have the HTML, CSS, and Bootstrap. The second project, now you decide now which framework or which front-end framework you're going to use. Also for this, just start with one. If you decide you're starting with React, take it and understand it fully. If you decide to start with Vue.js, pick it and understand it fully. Then integrate it now to this other project that you have done with the backend with one specific language. Then after that, you can now start getting real world experiences with that. Then along your journey, you need to also learn data structures. This is normally the mountain in technology because data structures involves quite a lot. So once you're able, now you have the confidence to develop the softwares and you have done several projects and you have the real world experiences, then now you can now start engaging on delving into the data structures, because data structures is I would say it's a work in progress, because there's no particular time you'll say you've fully understood data structures, because you keep on learning. The good thing with this is you have things like Glitchcode, which can practice your own notation and all that. So then finally believe in yourself at all times. With the confidence you gain as you do the projects, always believe in yourself, because the first thing before someone believes in you, you have to have believed in yourself. Then, as I've said, the key things you have to remember while doing any project, once you understand the crude process, how to create or insert something into the database, how to read that data from the database, how to update data into the database, and how to delete that data, then you're ready to take on any software challenge that you get along the way, because you already have those 4 key parameters that are needed for any software. Then now after that, you can now involve other things like APIs, data structures along the way. Then maybe to take you back a bit, if you before you start all this, remember to start by reading about pseudocodes and creating a flowchart. Reason being, sometimes you may be presented with a very hard or difficult scenario that you're required to, before you even start implementing, you're required to understand it fully. Remember, technology and coding is first understanding the code that you're working on or the problem you're trying to solve before you can even start executing it. I like to say code is just 20% of the whole task. The major part is understanding what problem you're solving. And before you understand it, you need to know, this is the problem I'm solving. I've understood this is how I'm going to solve it. Before now you convert that into code. And the best way to do that is to write it into a pseudocode. That way you're able to see, after I've done step A, then I need to do step B and step C. So that helps you also in having a clear picture of what you're going to code and also with a flow chart. So maybe with that, I can take some few questions. I was wondering if you want to just tell us maybe tech stacks are in the market for Kenyans, ranging from front end, back end, and system and DevOps. So maybe I can comment mostly on front end and back end. So from the front end, there is no specific language that is there for Kenyans only. Technology is open to all, but for front end, we have languages and frameworks like React, which is actually very prime right now in the Kenyan market. We have also Vue.js, we have Angular as well. Those are key frameworks that you can learn and take up in terms of the front end side. And then for backend, we have Spring Boot, which you can use, and Laravel and Mongo and Node. So those are the ones that you can take for backend. Maybe someone else can pick up DevOps. DevOps is not really my strong portfolio. Yeah. So I think that's it from me. Maybe I can take up more questions. Thank you. Back to you, Lawrence.
Your journey is so inspiring.
Thank you.
Uh, just personal part of it. Why did you choose PHP and hate Java when you during your school time?
Okay, maybe that I can take that. So the reason why I did that is, remember this at the start I said you're trying to learn various languages. So you're learning Vue.js. Actually, I started with learning Angular first. After now learning HTML and CSS through Akira Cheat. So I started learning Angular. Then I got to a point where I wasn't understanding what I'm doing. Went to Vue.js. Got to that point where I'm not understanding. So then the other thing is when we're learning Java, I wasn't understanding all these things about classes, objects, interfaces, abstraction, polymorphism. I was feeling they were quite a huge mountain to chew. So at that point, then I decided after that unit, that is not a language I'm going to touch. Because at that time, I wasn't chewing it or I wasn't understanding what it is. Then, now, when we went to the project, I asked myself one question. There's this language that people keep on talking about, PHP. The people say it's easy. At that time, I wouldn't call it easy because I didn't know whether it was easy or not. But everyone was saying it's easy, but it's dead. So I said, well, because it's just for the project, let me put my hands into it. And because I had to do the project, I had no other choice. I decided to now continue with PHP. So that's how I ended up picking PHP at that particular time, as opposed to Java, in as much as right now, Java is what I'm working with and Spring Boot. So I hope I've answered that. I saw another question.
Then before you
Daniel,
tackle another question too,
mhm.
what is your learning curve when you're transitioning from PHP to Java?
I wouldn't say I really had a specific learning curve because after I learned the core PHP, the first interview I did, the one I said, I was told if I did not show that project, I would have missed that opportunity. At that point, they were using Laravel. So remember one thing I said, once you are done with one project, you actually get that confidence to pick up any other task and you've understood how to create, that is inserting data into the database, read, that is pulling data from the database, update and delete. So I switched to Laravel. After switching to Laravel and did it for like 1.5 years, I got into a new position. Then now I had to learn Spring Boot. So I can't say there's really a particular learning curve, but it was now the need arose that I needed now to switch from Laravel to now Java and Spring Boot. So I would say it was necessitated by the new job I got.
Yeah, thank you.
So I'm asking, since can you link with internship for web development? Maybe Pius, you can elaborate further on that question. Whether are you meaning you want links and connections for that? Can you elaborate? And hello, asking for newbies. I personally, I think trying various languages as we did might be confusing as a newborn mind. So which language is encouraged a better one for a newbie to start with? Yes, Wycliffe, I agree very well. And that's why these days I say just start with one language. At that particular time, I did not have someone to tell me just start with one language or encourage me to start with one language. Or rather, I would say also, I used to hear people saying, once you do something, you're able to progress with into others. At that particular time, I didn't understand what that means. But currently, I encourage anyone starting, just pick one language and start with it. Don't do what I did. Don't try I think I tried like 4 or 5 languages before I settled on PHP at that particular time and now progressed into the Java and Spring Boot that I'm currently working with. Then so which language is encouraged? A better one for a newbie to start with. So I would say for me, I would encourage mostly Laravel. I find that language very easy, but also it can depend with what you want to what specifically are you looking into getting into, because tech is also wide. If you're looking to enter into software development, I would say Laravel is a backend after learning the basics, which is HTML, CSS, and Bootstrap. So I would encourage you to start with Laravel, in my opinion, because it's well structured. I find Laravel being very well structured. You're able to see which areas you have a model, which areas you have the view. So it's very well structured, even in terms of the MVC structure. Very well detailed. You don't have a lot of uh, rather a lot of structuring to do, unlike something like Spring Boot, where you have entities and all that. But Laravel is very structured. You only know you have these 3 things: the model and the view, and then the controller. Yes. So I would advise Laravel, in my opinion. Then Pius Kimayo. Yes, in terms of connections. Currently, I don't have, but maybe if I get, you can reach out to me. I can share my email, but currently, I don't have any connection. But in case I do, I can let you know. Then some portfolios out here are depressing. Someone has skills on PHP, Laravel, Dart, Kotlin, and JavaScript. Yes, there are people who try their hand on all, but first understand that one language, such that even if you go to all these other languages, and maybe also I should add JavaScript, it should be also a key language for you to know, because you'll always use JavaScript in your software development journey in one way or another. So yeah, some it's depressing, but just pick one language and stick to it. That's what I would encourage. Don't be swayed aside by people who have, and I've said sometimes it's necessitated by career changes. So at times maybe someone was in one company, they were doing Laravel, in another company they're doing Spring Boot, then they go to maybe somewhere like Google, they do Angular. So at times some of these languages are necessitated by career changes, but just pick one, start with that, then the rest will follow. You can easily understand any other new language once you've understood how programming actually works through one language. So I'm seeing Dimitron. Yes, you have a question?
Not really a question. You've actually mentioned. I'm seeing someone asking here. He's asking for newbies. This is Wycliffe. He's asking for newbies. Uh, what are the various languages they could actually start with? And this question actually is always very hard to answer. But I think you during your session you actually mentioned how I would have responded to it. When you're trying to get into the tech space, and Stacy has actually mentioned this, when you're trying to get into the tech space, the ecosphere, it is quite large, it is quite wide. First, you get to identify your interests. I'm actually quoting you, Stacy. First, you just actually have to identify your interests. So for you to identify your interests, you actually have to know what people are using out here. Like people are using PHP. The mighty PHP has been mentioned. Laravel, we have Java, Node.js. There's a whole myriad of programming languages people can actually use for development. So first, get to know what you're interested in, and for you to actually get to know your interest, you have to put your hand to trying these things. You have to try 1 or 2 things, fail here and there, and get to know what you can actually thrive on. Then two, after identifying, you get to know you get to have a goal in mind. What do you want to achieve after learning this programming paradigm, or this language A or language B? What do you want to achieve? And then 3, you get to work on projects and build your portfolio, and actually get to now start looking for opportunities. And you'll get to see, if you've been here from the start, you get to see I'm just trying to mention all what Stacey has been saying. And then 4, you put yourself out there, speak about what you're doing, let people know what you do, and that is what will give you connections. Like, if you don't speak, if you do these things in silence, nobody will ever know that you actually do them. So that is another thing. Yeah. And then you also get to connect with other guys, connect with other people who actually do it. That is what communities are for. That is what we at SYTTech we are trying to do. We're just trying to connect people of similar minds. We're just trying to connect other people. So that is what communities actually try to get at. And apparently all these Stacey has actually mentioned. So I'm just trying to put it through to Pius. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Jimmy. Yes, that's actually it. Just pick one language and start with it. And personally, I would recommend Laravel. Reason being, it's very well structured. Even for a beginner, you don't feel like you're bombarded with too much. You can be able to see a natural structure of what you're working on. You can see you have a model which interacts with the database, the controller which handles the logic, and the view which displays it to the client. So that's what you should just do. I hope, Cliff, your question has been answered. Then we have Karen Miano. You have said you started this tech this year. I have been sweeping through Twitter looking for events, and they may seem quite a few, or am I looking the wrong way? So, so for the tech events, just join the different groups. SpaceTech is one of them. They highlight different webinars or seminars that are happening. The other thing maybe I can share with you, there's a group called Women in Tech. That's a group for, it's not specifically only for women in tech, because there are men also there, but it also, I can share the link here. It also gives you the chance to see the different events happening along the tech arena. And then also Meetup. If you go on to Meetup, the app itself, you'll be able to join the different, I think they're called rooms, where you'll be able to see this specific channel has a meetup on this day, this specific channel has a meetup over here. Most of them happen at iHub. So you'll be able to see when you join the different channels within Meetup. So there are different groups. You have VU, you have AWS. There's so many on that. So I would recommend you also check up on Meetup. And then I've also shared the group for the Women Tech Makers group, where you can also get to see different events that are happening. Yes, SYTTech, I'm seeing you've raised your hand. Brian, it's not my group, unfortunately. I'm not an admin. I also got to join it through the various seminars that happen, but I can inquire about it, but it's not my group. Yeah, so I think that's it, unless there are other questions. So I've been exposed to late. Welcome, Wycliffe, and I hope your journey will be interesting within the tech arena. And then Matt says he built that event calendar, sign up and post upcoming tech related. So I think this is for community led groups. So I think that's for the admins who are leading the different tech communities. Yeah, so I think that's it from me, unless there are more questions.
Yeah, that's before you break out. When you're starting out, you had maybe challenges in getting resources or challenges in learning or mingling up with your mentors. What advice could you give anyone who's starting out into the tech space, and in what areas would you mind enlightening for them to get resources for learning?
Okay, so for that, I would say also, I would go back also to Karen's question At that point, I didn't actually know even there were seminars or meetups for technology. So I would say over there I was in the dark side of things. I didn't know. So that I would say that is actually one of the best areas to get mentors from, because you find so many techies around there. And the good thing is most of these people are always willing to share, always willing to hold your hand and your journey along your journey. So one of those places is just those tech groups and the seminars that people attend. The other thing is if you're also in school, there sometimes you find those clubs, the school clubs where people engage and you can get mentors from there. Then there's also a site, I can't recall the name, but there's a site where you can also get mentors from and be able to have someone holding your hand. I can't remember, but maybe once I remember, I can share it with Florence and we can share it out to the Space Tech community. Yeah, so those are the major areas I would say you can get a mentor. For me, I think I was in the black zone at that particular point until now when I started being serious about my career.
Yeah, great. Talking about mentorship platform, so SYTTech is coming up with a mentorship platform called Mentalist. You can join up the waitlist so that you can able to have a taste of the platform which we are going to release it very soon before end of this month. You can link up with your mentor when you stuck in the tech space. Then also my question to you, Stevie, uh, how, how did you handle or how can you advise someone to approach problem solving skills in terms of debugging your code?
Okay, so one thing I can say about that is one thing with any code is code follows one line after another. So be able to put down. That's why I said before you can even do anything else, learn about writing pseudocodes and flowcharts. Because with that, then you're able to have a clear picture of how your code is going to flow. And from that, you can be able to say, okay, now going back into the code area, we have things called breakpoints. So through those breakpoints, you can start from the first line. If I put my breakpoint over here, is my code running well? Then you go to the next line. If I put a breakpoint at this point, is my code still running efficiently? So with that flowchart, you can be able to see this whole structure. It's like if you're traveling from here to Mombasa, you have to pass Athi River, you have to pass Kitengela, you have to pass Ntitwande, you have to pass Voi, you have to pass Changamwe. So across before you get to Mombasa, have I passed Ntitwande? Have I passed Kibwezi? Have I passed Emali? Those are now the breakpoints that you have to tick along as you debug your code. Make sure you can be able to say, this is my roadmap, this is how the code is going to work. And then now am I able to tick all these areas? Have I passed this step using that breakpoint? Is my code flowing well after this breakpoint? That's how I would say is the best way to debug your code as a beginner. And then the other thing is on your browser, there's something called the developer tools. So within the developer tools, that is one area on the console. So when you go to your browser, you can click Inspect or Developer Tools, then you can see the console and also the network tab. Those are two tabs that you should always check on as a beginner when you're trying to debug. The console, especially if you're doing JavaScript, the console will be the best tool for you. And also the network tab, because you'll be able to see how your code is performing as it goes from one line of code to the next. So that's what I would advise for any beginner.
Yeah, thank you. Then with the developing with the developing of the change in the tech ecosystem, uh, how do you advise someone to stay updated with the upcoming new technologies, and how do you recommend what line should one use to in his or her learning path?
Okay, so to be updated, number one, the major one where you can be able to learn is through community sharing. So going for those meetups, that's the best place for you to learn, because I might have come across a new language and picked it up. I'll give you an example of something that is coming up. In as much as DevOps is not my strong forte, but we have AI ops right now. AI ops, it's very hard for you to hear of it currently, as it's still in the, I would say it's still in the baby stage. But through now, like this community, maybe one of you has heard of AI ops as for the first time. So I'd say through community sharing is the best way to learn about any new or upcoming language. And then the other one is reading a lot. Medium is also a very good platform to get updated on any new technology and what people are talking about. So those two places are what I would recommend. Medium and also communities. Then I'm seeing Triza is asking, what does a software engineer do that's different from a software developer? So a software developer, mostly it's like a subset of software engineering. So software engineering also involves now the whole computer system. Remember, as a software developer, you're just working on the system itself. So over here, I would relate it to something like computers, technology, and maybe just IT. Computer technology, you're also able to see how the code, or rather those mechanisms behind the computer itself. So software developer is just the software itself. Then software engineering encompasses everything to combined. I hope I've answered you, Triza. Then for those asking for events, SYTTech has offered a WhatsApp number over there that you can reach out. And then we are seeing this ADP list. I think that's the one for the mentorship. And then Brian, I'm a first year student and I recently started learning Python. I've been writing some codes. And my question is, how do you know how to apply what I'm learning, or should I just be patient and wait? So, number one, remember also learning, as I said, it can involve just learning either. Are you just learning what is a class? Are you just learning what is polymorphism? Are you learning what is the MVC structure? Or are you also doing a project to implement what you're learning? If you have learned this MVC structure, am I able to implement a full project and say, okay, I'm able to see how my code is interacting with the database. I'm able to see which section is doing the logic. Within the logic, am I able to say this interface or the controller, how is it also handling the logic, like the abstraction of code? How is it handling the inheritance of different objects? So that's something also you should be able to do. Start with a project and then go to the real world experience. By the real world experience is reach out to someone, even if you're going to job shadow someone. It can be a friend who's working for a certain company, and you tell them, I would want to job shadow you. And then from that job shadow, you can even help them in a specific task. The thing is, go out there, as they say, jitume. Go out there as long as you have done a project and you're able to see how is this specific feature in code working. Then go out there, reach out to someone, even ask for a job shadow. 1 week and be under someone, see what they are doing, do the same exact thing that they are doing. Then the other thing also is you can also decide to take a system and say you're just going to build that system. So for example, you see a certain website, it has payment integration and all that. Pick it up and say, I'm going to do a replica of this same thing, especially if you have the time. Pick that website, say, I'm going to do a replica of the software that is being used over here. If it's that learning management system, pick that module and say, I'm not going to use an already created feature like Moodle, but I'm going to create my own learning management system and do that. So that's what I can say. Dimitron, yes,
Yeah,
when learning, try to put yourself into projects too. Absolutely. Projects is the only way you can say you've actually learned what you're learning.
yeah. Just to add on, for brand, you can check up with the Jimmy who can connect you with the Discord server, so that you can connect up with different developers in the Python stack to know to know what you are learning together. Then I saw Rama, your hand was up. If you don't mind, you can unmute and ask a question.
Yes, my question is to Stacy. Stacy, aside from technical skills, what soft skills would you advise techies?
Okay, so for the soft skills, number one, collaboration. That's something I would really or highly recommend, because through collaboration, you're able to now meet other people and also now integrate, like Specialtech has said, you're able to even do GitHub requests, pull that request. So the collaboration is a major soft skill that you'll be able to use. The next one is networking. How capable are you at networking? Are you, I'll talk of this also as an introvert. At times also as an introvert, it's very hard to go out there and reach out. But at times that reaching out is what can help you. So networking and collaboration, those are two major skills that you require, or soft skills that you require for any technology person. With those two, you can conquer as much as you can conquer. There's no limit to how far you can conquer. Yes, I'd seen Jimmy Tran's hand and someone else was up. Yeah.
I also want to add on, if you wouldn't mind, to
Yes,
what
please.
Ram has asked. Yeah.
Yes.
Another soft skill that I think people don't really get to actually speak to is get to know how to ask the relevant questions. Like, as much as you want to learn something from people, first know how to ask questions. Like, if I would ask this way, will I get the correct answer? Because you as much as you want to you want to get mentored, you want to get there in your career, you sometimes don't ask the correct questions. Maybe someone comes to me and asks me, how do I integrate M-Pesa to my Python project? I'll just tell you it's in the docs. You didn't want me to actually tell it to you that way. You maybe wanted me to show you ABC. Maybe you can come to me, just frame it in a different way. I would like to do this on a Python project, and I've also seen the docs. So will you take me through? That way I'll get a different perspective of what you want to achieve. So learning to ask questions is also one soft skill that everybody has to get. Yeah.
Absolutely. Actually, that's a very important point, because at times you hear people saying, ask this person, but I want ID. But the thing is, before you even ask, you need to understand what you're going to ask. Because remember also, these people you're asking are busy. They also are doing other things. They're also doing other projects. So understanding what you're going to ask and knowing how to ask it. So that's a very important point, so that you don't end up saying these tech communities don't help. But ideally, it's you not understanding what you need help from. Yeah.
On the same part of knowing what to ask, maybe as a mentor, or maybe as a mentee, when you are following up with a mentor, you need to have a good mind in structuring your part of the question, not waiting to not reaching to a mentor to ask hi, then you wait for your mentor to reply hi so that you can ask your question. Be paraphrasing and good in framing your question when following up to your mentor too.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for that emphasis. That's exactly what you need. Otherwise, I will never get a response back. Be clear on what you want from the moment you just say hi, then go directly to your point. So yeah. Yes, Geoffrey.
Yeah, hello everyone. Can people hear me?
Hi, Geoffrey.
Okay, yeah. Hello, Jimmy. So, on the talking about just to add something about asking questions. Somewhere we were told that when you need to ask your questions, you need to package them well as follows. For example, let's use Jimmy's example, integrating an API to a project someone is working on. We were told that it is better you show someone, you first respect their time, then show them what you have tried to do and what you are trying to achieve, and tell them why you think you are failing. Then they can start thinking with you over the same issue, other than just throwing the question that how can I do this. So yeah, just to add on that.
Yes, absolutely. That is very right, Geoffrey. You have to know what you're asking to get the exact help that you need. So I think no further. Yes, Jimmy.
Geoffrey is opening us to some other new dimensions. I know we are past time, but just allow me to go through with this line of thought. Why it is very important for you to actually get to know how to ask questions. You get to see that when you really know how to structure your problems, when you know how to list them down, you sometimes get that you can actually get to solve them on your own. Like, let's say for instance, I've had problems with some Python code at some point, and then I just calm down, write down all my issues, and then as I'm writing them down, or as I'm trying to list them, trying to put them in a way that I can tell them to someone. Just going through that, I just get to see what the problem really is, because I am now explaining it properly to myself. So in that way, you also get to actually partly answer yourself by first articulating yourself in a more articulate manner. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. That is absolutely correct. So understand what you're asking and know what you're asking to be able to get the correct answer that you require and the help that you require. So I think if there are no further questions, I hand it back to Lawrence. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you. On my end is just to thank you also for making time on to have this talk with us. Then on the chat, I've also shared a link to our Discord server, and I've shared a link to Stacy profile so that you can connect with her. Then also, I also thank you, the audience, for making up this time. The session won't be successful without your presence too. For now, we can call it a session. And yeah, before you can call, I think there's a hand. Karen?
Oh, sorry, I actually just pressed unintentionally. I'm sorry.
Sorry, Stacy. Maybe let me just update the link before we get to leave the session.
Okay. Okay, so thank you so much for joining and listening to me. I hope for all those newbies, the session was very valuable. Maybe what is another question? What do you advise a beginner who is in the first semester, first year of campus? So as a beginner, the first year and the first semester of campus, you start with the basics. Even before you start delving into the key programming languages, first start with the basics of HTML, CSS, and Bootstrap. Then after that, you can follow through with what I've shared. Pick one language. I would specifically recommend the backend language. Understand it by doing a project, and I would say I recommend Udemy because the tutors have various projects that are well broken down, and you can be able to work through a whole project that just through that lessons from that specific tutor. Then after that, integrate it with now a front-end language. So for a first year, first semester, I would say first start with HTML, CSS, and Bootstrap as the basics. Yeah. So thank you so much. You can connect with me on LinkedIn since Lawrence had shared the link. Yeah, and I hope to all the newbies, this will be